Wutach River. The Wutach is a river 91 kilometers long in the southeastern part of the Black Forest in the German state of Baden-Württemberg. It is a right-hand tributary of the Rhine. In its lower reaches it flows for about 6 kilometers along the border with the canton of Schaffhausen, Switzerland. Name. The name Wutach means furious water, referring to the whitewater rapids in the gorge. What is recognizably cognate to a modern German word for anger, ach, which forms part of the names of many rivers in the region, comes from an old Celtic word for water, cognate with Latin aqua. Course. The river changes its name twice before it discharges into the High Rhine near Wutach. It rises in the southern Black Forest as the Seeberg in a highland hollow known as the Grubel, only a few meters below the summit of the Seeberg, a sub-peak of the Black Forest's highest mountain, the Feldberg. Shortly thereafter it drops in 3 cascades for a height of 62 meters down the Felssee waterfall into the rocky cirque lake of the Felssee. Heading east-northeast, the stream then follows the glacially formed Brental Valley through the municipality of Feldberg to Lake Titisee. During this stretch it is joined by the Segenboy, which rises on the Bouldenwedge back on the Feldberg. More than 70% of the average water volume of both streams is siphoned off before their confluence and diverted to the Schluchseewerk hydropower station. As a result, at the Brental gauge above the just under 5-meter high Seeberg waterfall, the Seeberg only has a volumetric flow of 0.3 m3/s instead of its natural 0.8 m3/s. Below the little waterfall, the Seeberg enters a flat valley basin which has filled the silted upper part of the Titisee since the last ice age. The stream now flows in wide meanders through the borders of the nature reserve before reaching Lake Titisee. From the Titisee, the sluggishly flowing Meadow River is called the Wutach Good Stream. Before Neustadt, it swings sharply through 90 degrees to the right and heads southeast in the direction of the almost equally large Josbus/Lange Nordneck. Below the town, 2 large bridges cross the valley, the Wutach Viaduct carrying the B31 and the Wutach Bridge with the Hellental Railway. From here on the river rushes through an ever-deepening gorge. From the confluence where the river acquires the name Wutach, it flows through a series of 3 gorges with a total length of more than 30 kilometers and a maximum depth of 160 meters. See Wutach Gorge, which has long been a tourist attraction. Between the second and the last part of the gorge, near the village of Ichdorf in the municipality of Blumberg, it takes a sharp turn known as the Wutach or knee of the Wutach, and subsequently flows SW to join the Rhine near Tangen in the town of Walchert-Tangen. At the Wutach, the river is very close to the headwaters of the Danube. Until the last glacial period, the upper course of the Wutach was the headstream of the Danube catchment called Feldbudonau. The lower Wutach valley is straight, wide-bottomed and very densely populated. The river forms the border between Germany and Switzerland for 2 sections that total about 6 kilometers in length, after which it is canalized. The most important settlements in this part of the valley are the town of Stuyvlingen and the villages of Eggingen and Wutaskingen. Before Lokingen, the Wutach turns again in the same direction at the tributary, this time the Klinging-Reben/Kottbau, which arrives in a broad valley from the Kletka region. In Unterlachringen, the Wutach forms one of the largest waterfalls in Germany, the power of which is why the Laufenmühle was built here, the largest industrial concern on the Wutach. The largest town in the Wutach Valley is nearby Tangen, where the Wutach is joined by the Kottbau from the Black Forest as well as its most important tributaries, the Steiner and Schlut. The Wutach finally empties into the High Rhine between Kuseberg, Kedelberg and Koblenz, a little below the rapids of the Kedelberger/Koblenzer Laufen. The stretch of the Wutach is the site of 2 remarkable railways. The upper stretch of the first gorge is crossed and followed by the so-called Hellentalbahn. The valley just below the 3rd gorge is the site of the Wutach Valley Railway, officially known in German as the Wutach Talbahn but commonly known as the Saarschweinsleben pigtail because it proceeds in a series of tight turns, including crossing back over itself, in order to make a substantial increase in height without exceeding a 100 gradient. Catchment. The Wutach drains almost the entire southeastern slopes of the Black Forest. There, its waters first flow through glacially formed valley troughs, carved into the crystalline rocks of High Black Forest. Here are the lakes of the Felssee and Titisee Wutach, Windverwehr Haslach, Schluchsee Schwarz and Schuchsee Schlut. After flowing through several very narrow ravines, streams reach the edge of the Black Forest and the sandstone, limestone and mudstone series of the South German scarplands. The lower course of the Wutach, which bends to head southwest, runs past the foot of the dominant white Jurassic steppe of the Swabian Jura and of Randon, at right angles to the dip slope, and thus collects several Black Forest rivers. The Kottbach, flowing from the other side to the east and parallel to the High Rhine, follows an Ice Age Rhine channel, the Klettgorren. The Wutach only drains parts of the Black Forest and thus resembles the Ents in this respect. The average annual discharge depths of the catchment area vary considerably, ranging from over 1100 mm in the High Black Forest to less than 300 mm in the Klettgau. The visible depth of the Wutach in its riverbed is much lower than would be expected of a river that under natural circumstances drained the catchment of 1140 km2. This is due to the water siphoned off the Schlüsselwerk power station, which particularly affects its largest tributary, the Schlude. Owing to its riverbed gradient of, on average, 13, critical high water often occurs on the Wutach. A well-known historical lithograph shows the valley floor at the Stuthingers completely covered by water. Its lower reaches were therefore canalized and diked in order to provide flood protection at the beginning of the 20th century. In the meantime, even former floodplains have been utilized for new construction and industrial areas. River history. The lower Wutach flows along the line of the valley once occupied by the much more powerful upper ancient Danube, but in the opposite direction. At the turn of the Miocene/Pliocene epochs, at a time when the Black Forest was already being uplifted, but the Rhine Graben was not as low as it is today, the Danube had its source in the area of what is today the Upper Rhone. This river system fragmented, and most of it gradually became a network of tributaries of the Rhine river system. For more information, see Wutach Gorge. Latterly, the upper and middle reaches of today's Wutach formed the Feldberg Danube, the upper course of the Danube. But after the watershed between the degraded Feldberg Danube and the downward-cutting ancient Wutach, which existed until the last ice age, had been severely eroded, the Feldberg Danube broke out to the southwest into the Rhine Valley some 20,000 to 70,000 years ago, forming the striking Wutach near Blomberg. Because of the relatively steep gradient in its new direction of flow towards the Rhine, the river carved out the deep, roughly 30-kilometre long, Wutach Gorge into the plateau, a process that continues today. It has excavated about 2 cubic kilometres of rock. The valley slopes tend to slip. This makes the Wutach Gorge even more of a transportation obstacle than its, in places, steep relief would suggest, and makes the maintenance of roads and tracks, and even of hiking trails, expensive. The A-track flows in the former riverbed of the old Feldberg Danube from its stream capture point to the mouth of the present-day Danube near Kirchenhausen. In its uppermost, very flat valley section at Blomberg raised bogs were formed. In its upper course, the Wutach as the Wutach forms another knee. It flows into the former main valley, which began at about the Candle, but was cut off and redirected a long time ago by the Wild Wutach. Similar river bends in the course of the tributaries from the Black Forest also show a much earlier redirection. Most strikingly, the Schwarze leaving the Schlüsselsee transversely to the direction of the valley. In the lower reaches of the Wutach Valley flows into the Klettgorren, and the Wutach then follows the direction of the Kottbach. Until the end of the Ice Age, some 200,000 years ago, the ancient Rhine flowed westward through the Klettgau here, instead of the Littow, Klingengraben and Kottbach. At the Ettiker-Laufen it rejoined its old riverbed. Only towards the end of the Wurm glaciation did it move its course from Schaffhausen southwards, resulting in the well-known Rhine falls there. At Rheinau Abbey, the meander known as the Rheinhofen-Rhine loop was formed. Nature reserves. About a third of the course of the Wutach is protected for conservation reasons. The river rises in the nature reserve of Feldberg, the largest in Baden-Württemberg. One of the oldest nature reserves in the country has been the Wutach Gorge, one of the last wild river landscapes of Central Europe, which have major historical, geological and ecological significance. Nearly every rock occurring in southern Germany is represented in the gorge, which is one of the most species-rich and intensively studied natural areas in Central Europe. A full-time nature conservation warden looks after the area, balancing the interest of up to 100,000 visitors during the summer months with the requirements of nature and landscape protection, including guided walks. One of the peculiarities of the Middle Gorge is the infiltration of the waters of the Wutach into the Muschelkalk. At lower water, the river can be dry up completely for a 1.3 kilometre stretch until its waters appear, cataract-like, probably completely again. Further river sections, which are protected, are the natural river meadows above Stühlingen on the border with Switzerland, extensive hostile colonies and its estuary on the Rhine. File Wutach 2, JPG Butterbur Colony on the Wutach. File Wutach FG5, JPG Butterbur Colony. File Wutach FG6, JPG Weevil Lipares on Butterbur. File Wutach FG8, JPG Giant Hostel. File Wutach F9, JPG Hairy Snail Trochilus. File NSG Wutach Lut 2, JPG Mushel Cut Beds in the Gotchich Riverbed. File Wutach FG2, JPG The Wutach. File Haslach Rich Infilson, JPG Haslach Gorge with the Rich Infilson Rocks. Cultural landscape. From a natural region perspective, only part of the Wutach is within the Black Forest. The central Wutach land with the middle and lower Wutach Gorge is outside of the forest. However, as in the bar, one can see that the culture here relates to that of the Black Forest, and not only with regard to tourism. This is, in part, due to their former common affiliation with the historic state of Baden. The Wutach Valley Railway is often counted as one of the technically remarkable Black Forest lines. The Wutach area below Stühlingen is part of the Klettgau and the High Rhine region. In the area of the gorge, the Wutach separates the Lake Constance Alemannic German dialect region north of the gorge from the High Alemannic German-speaking region south of it. This is particularly noticeable in a different way the letter K is spoken. On the northern side they say Kindchild and Kuchai equals Kuchor kitchen, whilst in the south they say Chind and Schutzai, which is closer to the dialect of neighbouring Switzerland. The locals call those living on the other side of the gorge the Enwittler far side of the Wutaches. For two short sections between Grummershofen and Eggingen, Wutach is the border river between Germany and Switzerland. The economic heart of the Wutach region is the town of Walchert-Tingen. The major industrial enterprises in the Wutach Valley are Stow AG building materials and systems in Stühlingen and Loffen-Mihol textile manufacturing in Lokringen. The hydropower of the Wutach and its tributaries is used by the Schloss and by the Wasser under electricity to Wachallau and Wunderklingen to generate energy. In the area of the Black Forest, the woodworking industry is still important, even after the closure of the new Stutt paper factory in 1989. Between 1624 and ca. 1760, timber was rafted on the Wutach from the area around the Titisee. It was needed in the old iron smeltery of Eberfingen. First attempt to exploit the Wutach by building a dam for energy production was made during the Nazi era. The project for the construction of the Wutach Dam, which was approved in 1943, ground to a halt during the Second World War. In 1951, the Schlossseewerk took over the plant and greatly added to them. However, the project resulted in a wide popular protest and was finally rejected for environmental reasons in 1960. Regions: Southern Black Forest and High Rhine. Regional planning regions: Schwarzwald, Bar-Hüberg, Süder, Oberrhein, Hochrhein, Bodensee. Districts: Breisgau, Hochschwarzwald, Schwarzwald, Bar, Kreiswaldstadt. Tributaries: its tributaries in the area of the Black Forest or Sitchenbach from the Feldberg region empties into the section of the Upper Wutach called the Siebel Langenordnach, and Justbach empties into the section of the Upper Wutach called the Gietach. Other tributaries of the middle reaches also form the Wutach Gorge system, in addition to the large river the Haslach. Other rivers which are well known are the Rotenbach from the forested eastern slopes of the Black Forest, Lotenbach from the eastern edge of the Black Forest near Bondorf through the Lotenbach Gorge, Lotenbach Gorge with the largest side gorge, the Gorgech Gorge, Gorgech Schlut, and its side gorge is Trinkbar, Morchech Schläferbach from the desolate valley stump of the Blumberger Forte. In the lower reaches of the Wutach in the Bade region of Klettgau, it is joined by the following streams: Weilerbar Mühlbar from the Futzen Valley, accompanied by the winding Wutach Valley Railway Ehrenbosch from the Rendento Valley, mainly on Swiss Solmorchenbach. Not until the last 8 kilometres of the Wutach is it joined by its 3 largest tributaries. Settlements: the following settlements lie on or near the Wutach: Feldberg, Southern Sieber Valley, Interzot, Northern Sieber Valley, Titisee, Neustadt, Lenzkirch, Haslach, Tal. Kapelle start of the Wutach Gorge, Friedenweiler with Rotenbach at the start of the Rotenbach Gorge, Bondorf im Schwarzwald south of the Wutach Gorge, Loffingen north of the Wutach Gorge, Hütingen village of Wutach south of the Wutach Gorge, Mundorfingen borough of Hüfingen north of the Wutach Gorge, Asselfingen borough of Blumberg-Storf, Stadt Lombard east of the Wutach Gorge, with its Storf at the knee of the Wutach Stühlingen. with Grummelshofen at the exit of the Wutach River. Rock faces Hallau east of the Wutach in Switzerland, Schlietham east of the Wutach in Switzerland, Eggingen, Wutaskingen, Hoheim, Lokringen, Tangen. Trails. The Upper Wutach area, Siebel Valley, Titisee, Schlutsee, Hochfest, is one of the most important hiking areas of the Black Forest and is covered by a dense network of trails. Through the Wutach Gorge run two main trails maintained by the Black Forest Club, Southern Freiburg, Bodensee Trail, Ostwig, Schluchtensteig. South of the Wutach Gorge, from Grummelshofen downstream, there are footpaths and cycleways by the side of the river. Literature. Geographisch Kartographisches Institut Meyer, Meyer's Native Research Oswald Maheim, 1989. Otto Fahrenheit. J. et al. Die Hochrein Regionen zwischen Bodensee und Bosel = Sammlung geologische Führer, 94, Berlin, 2003. Die Artikel hat die Wutach Bild einer Errungenschaft. Verdatum. Romanverlig, Freiburg, 1991. Landesanstalt für Umweltschutz, die Wutach Nährkundliche Monographie einer Flusslandschaft = Natur. Lange. Schutztyp. Baden-Württemberg. 6 Korsru, 1988. Otti Willmans, Excursions für Schwarzwald Einführung in Landschaft und Vegetation, Stuttgart, 2001. Note: several digital maps erroneously show the course of the Wutach following a former route of the Felber Donau. Probably as a result of misinterpretation, the drainage ditch which links the Schleiferbach Wutach Nebenbau and the A-track Danube tributary and thus forms a pseudo-bifurcation.